Hi, and welcome to this short session on the 5 reasons why people want to write a book but fail, and how do we solve that. My name's Colette Mason. I'm an author, book coach and publisher, and I'd like to share with you the system that I've used to produce 6 books for myself and over 1,000 publications for other people. I'll start off by explaining the 3 reasons why people fail to become authors. What is it that they do or that they think that stops them? And then I'm going to be talking about the 2 reasons why it's brilliant to be an author, because I think it's important to understand how the process works. And it's also important to keep your eye on the ball and keep your eye on the end goal. And remember just how important it is to you to actually become an author, because that can be very motivating and give you a lot of confidence. I'm going to explain how you become a successful author using my step-by-step process. I'm not going to leave anything out. You're going to know everything that you need to know to follow those steps. And I'm going to give you a little bit about my experience of what it was like when I published my first books. The first problem that really scuppers people is overwhelm, and that sense of not knowing where to start, what to do, as well as all the ideas that are buzzing around in your head about what you're actually going to write about. So let's think about this. People often complain to me that they're endlessly researching about their book. They're Googling things that they want to cover. They're Googling where do you get an ISBN number from, Googling about how do you come up with a good book title, Googling how do I use some particular aspect of Word. And it's just constant research all the time. And it's a bit like looking through a dictionary. You research one aspect of how you write your book, and then you find you're looking at something else and something else. Before you know it, half an hour, 45 minutes has disappeared and your book's no further on, which is really frustrating, and it just fuels the overwhelm. You're thinking, well, I'm working on this and yet I'm not working on it. Why am I stuck? And it's just exhausting. The amount of work that you think is involved seems phenomenal. And actually, it's a lot less work than you might think. I've done some other videos on my YouTube channel which explain why people overestimate the amount of effort it is to write a book by 400%. And I don't mean the actual technical process of getting the ideas out of your head and onto a piece of paper. I'm talking about just the amount of effort it is to write the number of words that a book requires. You've often got no clear book idea because you've actually got several books inside you and they're all jostling for prominence. And you think, well, which one's going to be the biggest hit with readers? Which one's going to work for me? Which one will bring me the most money? Which one will I enjoy writing the most? Which one will get me the most glowing reviews? Which one will get me featured in magazines? And again, there's this constant swirling of ideas and really nothing getting done. I've just got a quote from you here from another author, which I'd like to share with you, just so you don't feel alone. I'm just beginning. I feel pulled in many directions with many people contradicting one another. There's so much information out there, but it's quite confusing to new authors. It would be really helpful to someone to just create some diagrams or some outlines showing the key steps that are recommended. Other people worry about their writing speed and their written English. They wonder if it's going to be good enough. When they write something, they find they're deleting a sentence and changing a lot of words, changing one word for another, rephrasing something, looking for different facts, different examples. And again, it's not getting the job done and it's getting stuck. And you really need to tackle this feeling of not being good at explaining clearly and concisely what you mean. And again, on the YouTube channel, I've put some videos together to show you how you can work with that. And I'll be talking about it a little bit more in this session. Another concern is fighting with your word processor. If you're not particularly technically minded, it's very easy to get disheartened, thinking, well, my book's not going to look very good. I can't seem to align this how I'd like it to be aligned. I can't seem to use the time-saving tools like the table of contents. I'm having to go and manually work out which page is where in the book and then come back to my table of contents and type the numbers in very carefully, and then it all needs changing if I add a page or take one out. And again, this is things that are really adding to the overwhelm, and they don't need to. And I'll be sharing with you how you can work on that a little bit later on in our presentation today. The next big concern is undermining your credibility. People are concerned that they're going to write a flop, basically. They think they'll be harshly judged and people are going to hate them when their book's finished. There'll be torrent of 1-star reviews hitting their Amazon page, and it can really put you off. Even though I've written 6 books now, I still hesitate before I launch one, thinking, have I really got this right? Is it really good enough? It doesn't help that I'm a raging perfectionist as well, and I'm always wanting to swap things around and make them just a little bit better, a little bit better. You can't do that with a book because there's tens of thousands of words there, and you could change any one of them once or twice. It will be a full-time job just doing those tiny little tweaks that don't really add any value to the book. So you have to make sure it's good enough, do the best you can, and then launch it. You're not going to have any success at all if it just stays on your hard disk. On the website Author Earnings, where I got the previous quote from, there was another quote that I find interesting, and it says, "A single book that a couple of people decide they don't like kills the sales of all your others because they're worried about these bad reviews." Try not to get too disheartened about the bad reviews as well, because even books by Dickens or The Great Gatsby, people will still give those 1-star reviews because they don't like the plot, or they didn't like the cover, or whatever it is, all sorts of random reasons, or it arrived late in the post, so I gave it 1 star. So you can't dwell on that too much. It's just a fact of life, and you have to get your book out there. People are concerned once their ideas aren't in their head and they're now on paper and they can be scrutinised, that they may undermine their credibility or their reputation and their professional standing with a poor quality book. Obviously, sloppiness is going to undermine your credibility, but you can allow for that. Just add some extra time and get some extra eyes to help you, and make sure there aren't silly little gotcha mistakes still in your publication. You can also get feedback on the way through, and I recommend that you do this. You can get feedback on your book outline. So you maybe spent a day or two thinking about what you're going to include in your book, and then you get some feedback from other people and you say, is the scope of what I'm covering logical and in a good sequence? Is it complete? Is the scope right? Is it a bit too difficult for you or a bit too easy? Have I pitched the level right? And you can get feedback on that book outline. And if 10 people say, wow, this is an excellent idea, what you're going to cover is going to be really good, I can't wait to see when you've elaborated on the outline, then you know you're on to a winner. You can also have a look at the bad reviews and see why competitor books weren't well received by the audience. What was it about them? Was it that the book was a bit of a vanity book and they didn't really think about the reader at all? The author just wanted to see their name on the front cover. Was it that the book was full of ego trip case studies where the person could say, oh, I work with this big client and that big client, but the case studies didn't help the person understand the subject? What went wrong with it? Were there lots of words when the reader would have preferred a picture to understand the concept? All these little things that where other people have slipped up, you can know in advance before you start writing and make sure you don't make the same mistake. So by the time you've had the feedback and you've looked at what could go wrong and make sure you're not doing it, you're going to feel a lot more confident. I know you are. Here's a little comment that sums up the internal dialogue we have as authors. I decided I didn't want to publish my book anymore. I decided I didn't deserve to call myself a writer. I decided that the years of hard work that I put into this were worthless because the book was completely ruined. This person was talking about a few typos that they found in their book. And of course, typos are disappointing, but you can always fix them in the next version. It's not the absolute end of the world. And even the best websites, the best books, they still have mistakes in them from time to time. It's just a fact of life. Just do the best you can. Problem number 3. I've got anger and frustration for this one. There's so many aspects of writing a book that can go wrong and can wind you up and can not go smoothly as you'd like in your idyllic, perfect lifestyle. Lots of people complain about a loss of control if they go through a traditional publisher. That's if you could even manage to get a deal. Traditional publishing companies are going to be looking after a lot of authors and their own interest much before they're going to look after you as an individual. They get to set the price of your book. If they get the price wrong, it's going to harm your sales. Nobody's going to want to stock it if the margin's too low. If it's too high, nobody's going to want to buy it as a reader. And so if you can't control the price that you're selling your book at, you can't control the profit and the reward that you get for the effort of putting the book together. It's also frustrating if you're going through a traditional publisher having to pitch your idea again and again and again and hope that people are going to like it. Typically, a publisher is going to want to have a large mainstream audience hungry for your book. And that's not always very easy because a lot of best-selling books are already out there on those really big topics. And it's the smaller topics where you can really connect with the reader, where there aren't so many. And of course, because there aren't going to be millions and millions of readers wanting to buy it like a Stephen King book, then publishers will just say, well, toddle along, I'm going to work with somebody else. And that is very frustrating when you know you've got excellent information that you're sharing with people on a face-to-face basis or on a consultancy basis or workshops, and you just want to get it written down and out there. You know it works. And if somebody keeps slamming the door in your face, that is particularly annoying. You also lose the copyright if you go to a traditional publisher. And again, that's very frustrating. If they don't promote the book very well, they don't really market it at all, then that's going to come back to you and bite you on the backside. Also, I've heard horror stories where publishers have put a book together and they've spelt the author's name wrong on the front cover, and the author, because of contractual terms, has got no right to get that fixed, which is appalling. So I think it's really important that you don't go down that traditional publishing route. Yes, it's a bit of an ego stroke thinking I've got a book done by Penguin or whatever, but the drawbacks and the effort are quite considerable, and I think you need to consider other alternatives. Here's another quote that I took from authorearnings.com about what it's like to work with a traditional publisher. Traditional publishers have been doing less and less for authors over the past 50 years. A number of them did a good job for me, but at least 5 cheated me in one way or another. Writing a book for me is a very enjoyable experience, and if you've got things like this throwing curveballs at you, then it takes away from that enjoyment. And if you can avoid it, do. The other problem is you've got experts taking over. If you decide that you're going to be in charge of your own book and you're going to decide on the book cover, you're going to decide on who the editor's going to be and so on, then it can feel like herding cats. You may tell people, you've changed my tone of voice. I know you've made my book grammatically perfect, but you've kind of changed my tone of voice when you did it, and it doesn't sound like my book anymore. Well, they're going to say, I'm a professional proofreader. It has to meet my standards. This is how I expect English to be written and spoken. I don't like colloquialisms or slang, or perhaps you wanted to put a swear word in with stars when you really wanted to make a strong point, whatever mattered to you. And they might say, sorry, that's not up to my standard, that's not good enough. And they're going to take it out. And that's frustrating. Your views aren't always respected when experts take over. And I think it's really important that you know enough about what it takes to write a good book to make sure you can brief other people to act in your best interest. Finally, the biggest bit of anger and frustration for most people is the lack of progress. You've decided you're not going to go to a traditional publisher, and you've decided that you're going to slog away on your own and get this book done, and there's just this big stinking lack of progress, and you're sitting there thinking, why can't I do this? Why not? I can do all sorts of other things in my life. You know, I can get great jobs, I can run workshops, I can travel the world, I can learn a new language, I can do whatever it is, and I just can't get this book written. Why not? And the red mist comes down and you just think, oh, jigger it, I'm not going to be an author. I can't be bothered. But that always that gnawing feeling comes back that actually I still want to write the book, and there's this constant Jekyll and Hyde struggle, and we can fix that. So I've been tantalisingly mentioned that there are solutions to these issues. So what are they? I better tell you, hadn't I? Here's my tips for stopping overwhelm. Stop researching, make some decisions about the next 2 or 3 things you're going to be doing, and get writing. You cannot keep going around researching. The rubber needs to hit the road. You need to start writing something, and it's as simple as that. And you just have to commit. You must simplify the book writing process, and the easiest way to do this is to divide big tasks into small, manageable chunks. Don't try and think, how am I going to write the whole book? Think, what do I need to put in my introduction? What do I need to put on the copyright page? What text do I need to put on there? And just break it down into lots of little small tasks and only do 3 or 4 of them a day. But by doing that, you're making progress. And as you make progress, the feelings of overwhelm subside. Always focus on just the next step and not all of the things you need to do. That's the easiest way to reduce the overwhelm. Do what needs to be done today. Do what needs to be done tomorrow. There's a good technique called drafting, which is similar to writing, but you don't keep going back and reading the sentence you've just done and tweaking it. You get the gist of what you want to say down, and then you move on to the next sentence. It's like a bit like a big stack of toppling dominoes that you see, and you just keep going, and one sentence knocks into another, into another, into another. Before you know it, you've got a chapter done. If you're constantly going back and standing up the dominoes again and going back and standing up the dominoes again and then trying to topple them again and standing up the dominoes again, you're never going to finish the job. It's the same with writing. And I've got some videos on my YouTube channel about drafting and how that works. So please do go and check those. I didn't want to make this session too onerous, so go and have a look at those later if you're interested in finding out more about drafting. The last thing to do with overwhelm is the feeling that you're not very technically minded, or even if you are technically minded, you've still got to lay out the book. It still needs doing. You've got to decide on a book format and what font shall the headings be and what size shall the headings be and how wide should my margins be and all those things. So I recommend that you use a good book template. What to look for is make sure that the actual size of the paper that you're going to be using is going to match the printed book size you've got in mind. Remember, a book is around about half the size of a piece of printer paper. So your book template in Word needs to be half the size of a piece of normal printer paper. You can't always see that when you're looking on the screen. It looks the same. It just looks like a big white right angle. But if you start with the wrong size paper, everything needs reformatting later to make it fit into the smaller book size. So again, that saves a lot of frustration and rework later on. So do get a really good book template to elaborate your ideas in. When it comes to worrying about undermining credibility, then I recommend that you research competitors' negative reviews. What did they get wrong? What did they miss out? What did they put in that shouldn't be there? Did they ramble? How clear and effective was it? Find out. You can get some really ranty reviews, can teach you something brilliant about your approach. And it also helps you understand your reader a lot better. If you understand your reader better, you can write a better book tailored to them. Time very well spent. Get interim, unbiased feedback. Don't ask your best friend to tell you how brilliant your book is, because they may not want to upset you if there's problems. You want somebody who can give you unbiased, reasonably detailed feedback. You don't want a pedant who's going to find fault in everything that you've done. You just want somebody who's got a reasonable eye for detail and is good at looking at the book as a whole and not just looking for typos, and get some feedback from those people. Get the outline checked, get your first draft checked. Remember, when you're drafting, you're getting the gist down. Then you're going to tidy up, make sure there's no loose ends and problems. And then somebody else is going to read it. And these are called your beta readers. And they're going to give you feedback on the book as a whole. So again, if you get that interim feedback, you can fix any issues before it ends up on Amazon, before it ends up in front of your customer base. And again, it's your insurance policy to protect your reputation. Also, outsource editing and proofreading. If it's not your bag, outsource it. You can write a book for free if you want to, but you run the risk of being stuck in research hell on Google. You run the risk of coming up with a sloppy cover. You run the risk of being tired and knackered and exhausted and not spotting your mistakes. You're too close to your own project and you can't spot if something's missing or if something's in there that shouldn't be because you've been staring at it so long. So do invest in things that are going to influence the quality of your book. I strongly recommend that. Otherwise, you're going to end up with one of those I wrote my Kindle book in 24 hours type awful things that you find on Amazon. I really don't want you to be that person. So get help. Finally, anger and frustration. To solve this, I recommend that you retain as much control as possible by self-publishing your book. Do not go to a traditional publisher, because you won't be able to set your own pricing. You're going to have to constantly keep pitching and getting rejection letters, which is going to make you wonder if your book's any good. And the chances are it is good. It's just not right for that particular publishing house. Make sure that you keep the final copyright, again, by self-publishing, and you retain the final sign-off. You're the person who says, yes, this is good enough to go on Amazon. Yes, this is good enough to go in bookstores. If you're relying on somebody else to do that for you, although it sounds tempting and nice, they might get it wrong. They might not do it the way you want. So self-publishing, definitely recommend that. I also recommend that you learn more about the writing and publishing process. This allows you to raise the standard of your own work and your own writing, and it speeds up getting things done, which makes you feel more confident and removes the frustration of thinking, man, writing this book is taking up all my free time. And it also helps you outsource more effectively. If you know what needs to be done to get something up to a professional standard, you can audit what's being done for you and make sure it's good enough. There's lots of people who will do your book cover for £3 or $5 and just go to Google web search and steal your image. You don't want that happening. You need to know where you can get a good quality, legitimate image from that's licensed for use in print and in electronic format. And you need to know these things, otherwise you're going to be exposed to somebody who could rip you off. So I think it's really important that you understand as much about publishing as you need to control the bits that matter. And I think another way to solve the frustration aspect is to be accountable. Publicly commit to completing your book. Tell people, I'm going to have it written in 3 months, 6 months, however long you think is reasonable. Put it on your social media channels, share the outline with people perhaps, and just commit to getting it out there that you're doing it. By having a group of supporters around you, they can encourage you. And when you're being encouraged, it's much more difficult to feel angry and frustrated. You can talk over your project with people, and I think that's a much better idea. I firmly believe that with the right system and the right advice, nobody should be struggling to write and publish their book. We've spent some time looking at what can go wrong with a book, and you think, oh, wow, what am I setting myself up for? Well, I want to tell you what you are setting yourself up for, and there's 2 brilliant benefits to being an author. The first one, I think, is the excitement of knowing your book is really happening, and these benefits, I think you really feel them while you're writing the book and getting it ready. The best thing I think I felt was that, wow, look, I'm on Amazon moment. I know it sounds a bit soppy, but I was just so made up when I saw my book cover. It was Social Media Success in 7 Days. I wrote back in 2010. And there it was on Amazon, and you could buy it. And my friends started buying printed copies of it and showing me that they got it, asking me to sign it. Wow, that was so good. It was so good. And that feeling is just amazing. And everybody I've helped with their books, when they see them on Amazon, they are made up, absolutely made up. I think it's a major life experience, like your first house or your first car. And it's so good when it goes well and you can be proud of it. For those of you who are using your book to boost your business, then you're actually creating an asset when you write the book, several ways. It helps you position yourself as an expert. Now, I don't recommend you write a book purely to be seen as an expert, because you fall into the trap of writing the book that you want to write. And you want to write the book that helps your readers achieve something the most. So it's flipped around a little bit, but it still is going to position you as an expert, particularly if it meets readers' needs and helps them do or master something that really matters to them. Then it is going to boost your credibility. Also, it saves time. If you're constantly briefing people about the same basic information all the time, rather than pointing them to your website, why not shake their hand, give them a copy of your book, which costs £3, $5 to get a book published, a single copy. And you can give that to them as a lead generation tool. Who's not going to want to look at that book and think, wow, this person knows their stuff. There's a tangible record there of what you've achieved, what you've learned. And that's great. That does impress people. Writing your book gives you an opportunity to renew your enthusiasm in your career and your business opportunities as well. You might want to write a book about the most cutting edge techniques that are going on in your industry, or you might want to think back at some of the high points and the successes that you've had and how you achieved those successes so you can help other people achieve similar results. And that's really good fun. And I really find it invigorates you. Certainly, I've found my interest in Word has gone up exponentially when I've been thinking, how can I build something in Word that's going to make it really super simple for somebody to write their book? How can I show them the best way to get it done and all the time-saving tools without them actually having to understand? So it had to make me think about Word in a completely different way. And how's it going to help somebody if they didn't have Word, or they had Word 1997 to 2003? So I had all these ideas that I had to solve, and that was really good fun. And you'll find that when you write your book too, it'll get you to revisit aspects that you've really enjoyed in your professional career and share them. You can get to use your existing skills in a new way or format. If you're very proud of the lengthy emails that you write or the business reports that you've put together for clients, then putting something in a physical printed book is exciting. It looks so professional. And when you see the book on a bookshelf, when you go and visit somebody, or again, when you see it on Amazon, it's just brilliant. And all you're doing is using your communication skills in a slightly different way. It gives you an opportunity to pick up new skills as well. One of the things I like to do is I give people a cover designer tool, which is done in PowerPoint, and there's lots of basic things in there already. So all you need to do is type your text over the top and perhaps change an image if you want to. And you've got your cover design ready for some feedback to see if it's heading in the right direction before a graphic designer does a proper version for you. So it's a great idea. Think which colours do go together? Why do those colours go together? Why is that font better than another font? What do I need to do in my instructions to make them clearer? So it gives you some new things to ponder in a nice way once you know what you're doing. And it's great to collaborate with some other people as well. Ask them how their book project is going on, find out more about their story and what's prompted them to do what they're doing. I think it's important that you gather together with other writers as well as people who are helping you with the book process. And you get to create a book that interests you as a person and also your readers. You're not writing a book that impresses the publisher and ticks their marketing boxes. You're writing a book that you know makes a difference because it's made a difference when you've been speaking face to face with people, or it made a difference in your life. And you get to share that, and that is very exciting. My second author benefit is the sense of achievement. Once your book is done, how does that feel? Why is that really good? You can earn money from your knowledge, particularly with non-fiction books where you're sharing processes, systems, tools and templates. These are going to save people business expenses, or they're going to make their business more profitable and so on, or you're going to improve the quality of somebody's life. They've mastered something and they want to learn more from you. So these are good ways of making more money. You can also be proud that you've written a good quality book, that you're proud that your name's on the front, because you've asked people, what do you want to know? How can I explain this to you in the most efficient and enjoyable way? You know you've written a good book. You've not written a rambling dirge. You've written something that makes a difference, and that is a great feeling. Sharing the knowledge that you've got, paying it forward, leaving a legacy, however you want to look at it, is very motivating for a lot of people, especially for those who are writing books about overcoming hardship, like overcoming cancer, for example. I've helped some people with that. Another chap, Mark Burrows, he wrote a book about his love of chickens, and he kept chickens for nearly 30 years now, and he sold chickens. He sells rare chicken eggs and feeders and waterers and all these things. And he just wanted to pass on what he knew, and he loved it. Again, it's nice to get reader compliments about your book and how much it's helped them. I often like to put a little sentence in the end of my books saying, will you please email me with your success stories? I want to know how you've got on. Did this work? Let me know what went well for you. Can I make it any better? It's great to receive the compliments from that. And again, around the world, I had press coverage all over the world. When I wrote my first book, I decided to promote that one quite heavily in the press, and I was featured in Australia and America and the UK, which was brilliant. It felt really good, and it exceeded my expectations, and I think you'll find you exceed yours. You never know where your book's going to take you, whether that's some of the people I've helped have been interviewed on the BBC World Service, for example. They're an expat and they got interviewed about what it's like to live in a particular country. Other people have been featured in national newspapers. It feels really good. It's a chance to prove naysayers wrong as well. Quite a few people I know who are dyslexic who've written books were always written off as having poor spelling, and the grammar police, were hunting them down. And they still managed to write their books, and they're super proud of what they've done because they were always told they wouldn't amount to much on paper. So you're ready to learn my secret process of how I put my books together. This is it. 7 very simple steps. We start off with research and planning. Research means looking at what you're going to put in the book. This means we're going to make sure it's what readers want to read, and it gets rid of all those other potential book ideas that you could write. So it gets rid of a lot of overwhelm right at the start. You can also look at ways you can monetize your knowledge during the research stage, and I encourage you to do that. How did other people sell products and services to do with their book? Did they offer retreats? Did they offer courses? Did they offer a membership site or a paid newsletter? That all comes into research, so it's quite inspiring that stage, I think. There's 2 weeks to do that. The next step is planning, where we've gone ahead and decided which angle you're going to take for your book. And then you need to come up with the book outline to make sure that everything's going to be clear, concise and logical for the reader so they can master the ultimate goal that they're looking for. And during the planning stage, we make sure that whatever we're telling people meets that goal. The next stage is preparation and making sure we get rid of any overwhelm to do with the technical aspect of writing, from getting it in your head and actually typing it in on the computer and aligning it and all those things. So there's a week there to get your book outline in the template. Take the template for a bit of a test drive. Whenever you're learning something new with the computer, I always think it's good to split the task into two. Task one is, how do I do this? How do I make it look the way I want it to? The other aspect is, what am I saying? What information am I sharing? If you split those two up, you can just focus on learning what you're doing. It's a bit like learning to drive a car. You learn to drive the car around the block. You don't learn to drive the car driving to the other end of the country. It's too much planning. It's, what am I going to eat? Where am I going to stop? Where am I going to get fuel from? Forget that. Keep it really simple. Learn how to drive the book template and then work out the destination and how you're going to get there. The next step is actual writing. And if you look at the pie chart here, you might think that, writing my book's going to take forever. But look at the size of that segment. It's about a third, isn't it, of the pie chart. And you've got 9 weeks to expand on your book idea. You've got all your headings in your book template, and all you need to do is expand on them just like you talk around slides like I'm doing here. Makes it super quick to get your book done. It's almost like writing 2 or 3 short emails a day, really, expanding on 2 or 3 headings. And that's all you need to do. And you do that for 9 weeks. If you're on a roll, expand on more headings. If you're not on a roll, or you've got to go to a wedding, or you're on holiday, or you're ill or something, you've already earned a few credits because you wrote a bit more when you had more time. Don't try and catch up. Always try and be ahead with the writing, and it'll keep that overwhelm at bay. Once the elaboration is done, you've got your first draft ready to show your beta readers, and they'll give you some feedback on possible improvements. You have to make a bit of a value judgment there. Are you going to make the improvements? Is it somebody's personal opinion and your other reviewers didn't have a problem with it? Or is it a real showstopper and your reviewers picked up on something that's quite important and definitely needs attention? So you've got a month there after you've got the book down on paper to get rid of any wrinkles and get it in good shape for the next stage, which is polishing. And again, there's another 4 weeks here to look for those typos, look for those formatting and layout inconsistencies and anything else you might have worried about. So you're not writing at this stage at all, but just looking for mistakes. 4 weeks gives you enough time to outsource it to somebody else, have a bit of toing and froing and feedback if it requires it, and off you go. Then finally, there's 2 weeks to really dig into promotion. If you've outsourced the proofreading and editing, you can be working on your promotion pack earlier if you want to. And this is a set of standard templates that PR professionals will use to promote a book. So there's bits in there about the author and why you wrote your book and why you're best placed to cover that topic, your experience, your credibility, the client list you've worked with and all these things. Then there's the book synopsis, which gives magazines the opportunity to feature your book with different lengths of article. It's all pre-written for them, ready for them to just pick up and use in their publications. There's a tip sheet where you might have, say, 5 reasons to do something or 10 ways to solve something, and they make great magazine content, and it's all ready again for the owner to just pick up and put in their publication. So that's the sort of thing you'll be doing in promoting. So it's very straightforward, it's very simple. All the modules are completely standalone, so you don't need to worry about other things. You just look at the segment that you're working on and go on to the next one to make sure that you do become a successful author. Why should you trust me with a book? Well, I'm hoping that you trust me by this stage. We spent half an hour together and I've been showing you some of my tips and techniques, which I'm sure you found useful. I've helped 2 students produce best-selling books. Now, some people rig their bestsellers on Amazon by encouraging lots of people to download a free Kindle book. These best-selling ones were from sales. One was in Africa Travel. I can't remember which one the other one is, but it was about keeping livestock. It was Mark's chicken book. And it was in the best-selling top 10 list for 9 months. Now, you just can't fudge that by giving away copies. It got there because people bought the book. You can see Mark's testimonial on my YouTube channel if you'd like to find out more about how he felt about writing his book. I've written 6 books myself, and they've all been written in around about 30 days. 1 or 2 have taken me 60. Perhaps I've been ill or I went on holiday and it slowed me down a little bit. I lost momentum because I didn't persevere. But still, I think within 60 days is very good. It's long enough to do a decent job, but it's not that long that you get bored and run out of momentum. Thanks to my book, I was able to have national and international speaking gigs. I was working in Australia. I went to Egypt. I went to Switzerland, and I spoke a lot in the UK when I did my first book, and I got global press coverage, and that was a great feeling. I've been working with information every day since the 1980s, whether that's a spreadsheet or a presentation or a video or some audio. Whatever it is, I worked with it to do with information. And so I know the easiest ways to express what people want to express, to get it out of their heads and into whatever format it needs to be. I know how to do that because I spent my whole life doing it since the age of 14. I've been working with information, so I can show you the easy way to do something. I'm also a professional coach. I've done my NLP practitioner and my master NLP practitioner qualifications, and that gives me the opportunity to help people get past stumbling blocks by encouraging them to look at things in a different way. So that's very helpful as well. I think a lot of the book coaches out there are more marketing people, or they've written a book themselves and they're showing somebody over their shoulder what they did, but I've actually got qualifications that lets me help you and coach you properly. I was also a publication consultant for the UK government, and my book templating system has been used to produce over 1,000 publications. Now, these are ebooks because the government wants to save the taxpayer money, but I think looking at the standard of them, they look good enough to be printed books. Some of them are printed books. Command papers, for instance, can be ordered from the stationery office in printed format, but the government wants to save trees and save resources and save money, so they're all digital. But I think this gives you a good example of the standard of work that I was doing, and over 1,000 times. And something like the national curriculum is very important. It was viewed millions of times by teachers, parents, social workers, all sorts of people would be interested in the national curriculum and children's education. It was actually featured on the BBC News the day it was launched. So these are very high profile things. You can trust me with your book. You can trust me with your reputation because in the case of command papers, the Queen trusted me to do a good job. And in this case, ministers were trusting me to do a good job. That brings me to the end of this session on the 5 reasons why people want to write a book and fail and how we solve that. I do hope you found the information useful. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch with me. I'd love to help you. I want to make as many people successful authors as I possibly can. Bye for now.